Have you ever felt that subtle, almost invisible shift inside you? That moment when you suddenly realize you've been pouring too much emotion, energy, and attention into places that never truly valued or even noticed you? It's not the exhaustion of overworking your body or mind, but a deep weariness that comes from neglecting yourself, from giving too little care to your own needs. And then, almost quietly, something inside you snaps, not with anger, but with piercing clarity. The realization dawns: enough is enough. It's time to stop bargaining your worth in spaces that never deserved your depth. Time to stop chasing empty echoes and start creating solid foundations. The world around you is noisy. People constantly demand your presence, your reactions, your explanations. But the true Stoic, he doesn't get pulled into the chaos of noise. Instead, he responds with alignment, moving not to impress others, but to become who he truly is. And in that becoming, everything changes. Suddenly, you no longer feel the need to explain yourself. You stop overgiving, draining your reserves on those who never asked. You stop waiting for others to see your value, because finally you see it clearly yourself. This is not detachment or coldness. It's refinement. It's the powerful transformation that happens when you choose to live by principle rather than by fleeting emotions. You begin to sense the deep strength of stillness, the protective power of boundaries, and the crystal clear clarity that emerges when you stop proving yourself and start embodying your true self. That is Stoicism, not suppression or emotional numbness, but self-mastery in graceful motion. It's like a quiet fire burning steadily within, needing no audience to validate its heat. When you live this way, when your discipline speaks louder than your words, when your presence radiates intention instead of effort, something shifts in the world's perception of you. You stop being available to what drains your energy. You stop pleading for what should be freely given. You refuse to lower your vibration just to fit in. This journey isn't about manipulating others. It's about reclaiming control over yourself. Because the moment you put your principles first, the world begins to prioritize you. The first step: master your emotions or risk being mastered by them. It begins with a tiny thought, a subtle reaction, a slight sting from a glance or tone that feels harsher than it should. At first you might brush it aside, but if ignored, that small emotion finds fertile ground to grow. Before you know it, it floods your system, sharpens your tone, colors your decisions, and drains your peace long before you realize it. This is the silent danger of emotions left unchecked, not because you feel too much, but because you never learned how to hold and manage what you feel. The Stoics never denied their emotions. They didn't preach freezing feelings or becoming robotic. What made them powerful was discipline, a deliberate space between what happens and how they respond. A pause long enough to choose clarity over chaos, calm over confusion. Building on the awareness of inner power and emotional mastery we discussed earlier, let's dive deeper into Marcus Aurelius's teaching about controlling the mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. But that strength doesn't come from becoming emotionless. It comes from becoming the true master of your emotions, being aware of what you feel, yet not allowing those feelings to own you. Every time you react solely from emotion, you hand your power away to a stranger who cut you off on the road, to a comment unworthy of your breath, to a past you haven't fully let go. In that moment, you become a puppet, pulled by strings you never meant to tie yourself to. But when you slow down, when you observe instead of absorbing unconsciously, when you feel without flinching, that is when control returns to you. Not rigid control, but rootedness, deep stability. You stop being pulled, you stand firm. And others, notice, they feel it. The person who masters their emotions commands attention not through domination, but through steadiness. While others react hastily, you remain calm. While others explode, you calmly examine. While others panic, you choose deliberately. This is not easy, especially in a world that rewards outrage, a culture that teaches you to speak before thinking, to feel before understanding, but the Stoic does not follow that rhythm. He does not perform his pain, he studies it, he learns from it, he reclaims it. So when emotion rises, and it will, pause, sit with it, ask why it's here, let it speak without letting it take the wheel, then respond, not out of habit, but with alignment, because emotions aren't the enemy, but without discipline they become the master. Second, don't chase people. Focus on becoming. There comes a moment in everyone's journey when they realize they've been chasing something outside themselves. Affection, approval, closure, attention, all hoping that someone or something will finally make them feel whole. It's a quiet moment, often accompanied by shame. You look back at your messages, your memories, your efforts, and suddenly see how much of your life has been shaped by chasing people who were never meant to stay. You tried to be enough for them. You made yourself smaller so they would stay. You said yes when you wanted to say no. But in the process of chasing, you lost the very thing you hoped someone else would value, yourself. The Stoic doesn't chase, not because he doesn't care, but because he understands the cost. To chase someone is to say, my worth depends on your presence. It is to hand over your peace and wait for them to return it. And the more you do this, the further you drift from who you could have become. If you had stayed rooted, there is a deeper truth here. When you chase, you abandon not them but yourself. You step away from your own center to meet them where they feel comfortable. You dim your light to match the shadows they haven't healed. You bend your boundaries just to keep them close. And all of this comes at a cost, because the energy spent reaching for someone could have been used to build something lasting within yourself. Carl Jung wrote about the inward journey, the process of individuation, where a person must separate from the collective, from learned roles, from inherited patterns, to become something more whole. Continuing from the process of recognizing and holding on to your own values without following others, let us take a deeper look into this journey of personal growth. That process is never easy. It can even be painful. You realize how often your identity was shaped by what others wanted from you, by how well you fit in, by the safety and likability you displayed. But the soul does not want mere conformity. It wants to expand and grow, and that expansion cannot happen if you're still trying to prove your worth through proximity to others. So what happens when you stop chasing? At first, that silence may feel lonely, even isolating. You feel the pull, the urge to explain, to reach out, to fix the discomfort of being misunderstood. But then something begins to shift. Your energy softens. Your nervous system no longer waits tensely. Your breath returns to you. You no longer revolve around someone else's orbit. You start building your own. You pour time and passion into your work, your discipline, and your presence. You invest the energy you once used to seek others into becoming someone you can truly trust. Someone who does not flinch when others leave. Someone who doesn't collapse into silence. Someone whose value is not borrowed, but deeply rooted. And here's the paradox. The more you stop chasing, the more magnetic you become. Not because you try to attract anyone, but because your internal alignment resonates louder than any words. You stop trying to impress. You become real. And truth is rare. Truth is power. The Stoic walks with quiet authority, not because he has all the answers, but because he no longer needs others to fill his silence. He doesn't perform. He doesn't persuade. He lives. He becomes. And those meant to walk with him will match his pace, not be chased. So if you've been running after someone, waiting for someone, trying to convince someone, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what part of me am I abandoning just to be chosen? And if the answer hurts, that's good. Let it wake you up. Let it be the beginning of your return, because your life is not a stage for others' attention. It is sacred ground where your soul is meant to grow. And growth cannot happen when you are stuck chasing shadows that were never bright enough to hold your light. So stop chasing. Start building and let your becoming speak for you. Third, value your time more than your feelings. This is a trap almost no one sees because it feels so personal, so justified, so emotional. You are hurt, so you explain. You are offended, so you defend. You are misunderstood, so you spend hours proving your point. You replay conversations in your mind. You wonder what you could have said differently. You hold the tension in your chest not because you enjoy it, but because you feel entitled to it. Because your feelings at that moment feel more important than anything else. But while you are lost in all that, time keeps moving. The day does not pause for your grudge. The hour does not wait while you craft the perfect reply. Your life does not slow down just because you decided to dwell in it. And unknowingly, you trade the most precious thing you have, time, for the most temporary thing you feel. This is where the Stoic draws the line. Not because feelings aren't real. They matter. But they don't matter more than your time or your life. You can feel something fully and still not let it dictate how you spend every hour. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." He wasn't denying pain. He was warning us about our relationship with it, how we amplify it, carry it, and marinate in it until it becomes a lifestyle. Building on the choice to keep distance from fleeting emotions, let's explore how time and focus become the most precious assets of the Stoic. While we are busy justifying our emotions, resentment, frustration, outrage, life quietly slips away without us noticing. You begin to grow when you stop giving all your time to your feelings, not by suppressing them, but by prioritizing wisely. You learn to ask better questions. Is it worth spending an hour feeling offended? Is this argument worth the mental exhaustion it will leave behind? Is this relationship worth the endless cycle of emotional labor without any clarity in return? Most of the time, the answer is no. The Stoic does not dismiss emotion. He studies it. He respects it, but does not worship it. He understands that time is the one thing you can never get back. And if you spend it on every small emotional ripple, you'll never have enough energy left to build, to reflect, to truly live. So he learns to let things pass, not because he's numb, but because he is free. He doesn't need to fight every battle. He doesn't need to correct every misunderstanding. He doesn't need to be right if it costs him his peace. The decision to hold back, to walk away, to choose time over tension is not weakness. It is maturity. It is self-mastery. There will always be someone who triggers you. There will always be situations that stir anger, sadness, disappointment. But you get to choose. Will I give my limited time to this passing emotion, or will I hold space for it, learn from it, and keep moving forward? Over time, this choice becomes your power. You become someone who protects their focus, someone who does not leak energy into needless drama. Someone who lives from a deeper rhythm where emotional waves are felt but not followed. This is true discipline, not avoiding feelings but not bowing to them either. Knowing when to express and when to detach, when to speak and when to walk away, when to feel it and when to release it. So the next time your emotions flare and the urge to react rises, pause. Ask yourself, if I spend the next hour here, will it build my life or just drain it? Because your time is sacred and your feelings, while valid, aren't always worthy of it. Fourth, say less, observe more. The world rewards noise. It praises quick answers, hot takes, clever comebacks. You're expected to respond fast, speak loud, take up space, even when you don't really know what you think or why you're saying it. And if you pause too long, people get uncomfortable. Silence is treated like absence, observation mistaken for disengagement. But the Stoic knows something different. The one who speaks least often sees most. There is a strength in quiet attention that most overlook. Not the silence born of fear, but the silence born of discipline. When you stop trying to be heard and start trying to understand, your vision sharpens. You hear beneath the words, you see behavioral patterns. You notice what's unsaid and what that silence is protecting. Because when you are always talking, always reacting, always filling space, you are not learning. You are performing. You are living outwardly, not inwardly. You are managing impressions instead of developing perception. That's why so many feel unseen, scattered, misunderstood, not because the world is too loud, but because they have never practiced the art of stillness. Continuing from the power of silence and deep observation, let's explore how discipline creates distance. A distance not just physical but spiritual, elevating who you are. Epictetus taught that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Not just to listen more, but to reflect more, to slow down impulses, to wait for clarity before offering opinions, and to separate what is real from what is merely reactive. But this kind of inner stillness is rare in a culture addicted to speed. When you begin speaking less, something shifts inside you. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself in every conversation. You let the pause linger without rushing to fill it. You stop trying to correct those who don't want to understand. You start reserving your voice for what truly matters. The truth is, most people don't listen to understand. They listen to reply. But the Stoic listens to observe, to absorb, to see. He knows that every person reveals themselves if you stay quiet long enough. Insecurities, manipulations, wisdom, truth, all rise to the surface when you don't interrupt. This applies not just to people but to life itself. When you speak less, you see more. In situations, relationships, and your own reactions, you begin to notice urges before they become actions. You watch your anger take shape without becoming its voice. You see assumptions before they become judgments. This is presence, this is power, and that power grows. People start to feel it. You become unpredictable. Not because you're hiding, but because you're selective. Your words carry weight, not because they're many, but because they're measured. You're not cold, you're intentional, you're not passive, you're perceptive. So say less, not to disappear, but to deepen. Let others waste their energy, trying to be heard everywhere. You don't need the noise, you don't need the performance, you need awareness, and that's what silence gives you. Because when you stop talking to prove who you are, you create space to become who you are. Fifth, discipline creates distance. There's something quiet about discipline. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for recognition. It doesn't need to be posted or praised. But it creates a real gap, a separation between you and who you used to be, between where most people stop and where you begin. That distance is earned and sacred. At first, discipline feels like limitation, like denying yourself ease, rest, comfort, or pleasure. You wake early when no one's watching. You say no to distractions while others say yes. You train your mind to stay focused even when it wants to scroll, complain, or wander. For a while it feels like you're missing out, but over time, that same discipline creates something else. Freedom, space, clarity, a life built on structure instead of impulse. While others are pulled by moods, you are guided by values. While they react, you respond. While they chase dopamine, you build direction. And that distance grows. The Stoic doesn't seek distance from others out of superiority. He doesn't isolate himself out of pride. He simply walks with intention. And intention has a rhythm not everyone wants to match. Most people live in cycles of reaction. They do what feels good in the moment, then wonder why their lives feel scattered, hollow, anxious. But the disciplined person knows comfort is cheap. Mastery has a price, and the price is repetition. Choosing what matters over what's easy. Choosing silence over drama. Choosing effort over excuses. Choosing to live today in a way that earns peace tomorrow. Discipline creates distance, not just from others, but from your old self. The version of you that procrastinated, blamed, avoided, settled. That self begins to fade when you begin to rise. Building on the power of discipline, creating distance and personal progress, let's now acknowledge that this change can sometimes come with loneliness. Yes, sometimes you will feel lonely. People will say you've changed, that you're too serious, too focused, too unavailable. Let them say what they want. You didn't come here to blend in. You didn't come here to make others comfortable while abandoning your own growth. You came here to rise, to move differently, to build something that lasts, not something that just looks good online. Discipline is the structure you build inside yourself so that you don't have to live at the mercy of chaos. It is the silent contract between who you are now and who you are becoming. And the more you honor it, the less tolerance you have for anything that pulls you backward. This is where the real shift happens. You no longer need motivation. You move because it is who you are now. You don't negotiate with your excuses. You don't justify skipping the work. You simply show up because you said you would. And that distance, the one you once feared, becomes your edge, your shield, your peace. So if you feel the separation growing between you and those who still live impulsively, between you and your past self, don't resist it. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. Discipline is doing what others won't now so you can live how others can't later. That's the gap. And you don't need to apologize for being ahead. You just need to keep going. 6. Let silence make them wonder. You don't always need to explain. In fact, the more you grow, the less explaining you do. At some point in the journey, silence becomes more powerful than speech. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned the value of restraint, stillness, and keeping certain truths inside until they mature enough to no longer need an audience. In a world obsessed with noise, silence is provocative. People are uncomfortable with it. They expect answers, reactions, statements, justifications. But the Stoic doesn't respond on command. He doesn't reveal what doesn't need revealing. He doesn't perform transparency just to put others at ease. His silence isn't passive, it's principled. When you choose silence intentionally, it becomes your posture of strength. You stop trying to fill the void. You stop rushing to be understood. You stop negotiating your truth in exchange for momentary validation. And the beauty of that choice is this: people begin to wonder, Not because you're hiding something, but because your energy no longer leaks. You've become unreadable in the best possible way. Marcus Aurelius himself was surrounded by politics, power and competing voices, yet his journal is filled with reminders to stay grounded in simplicity, restraint and inner reflection. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. In that spirit, the Stoic understands your presence is the message. Your silence, when chosen from strength, is not absence. It's density, pressure, weight. But silence is difficult, especially when you've spent most of your life being reactive, trying to explain your intentions, prove your goodness, fix misunderstandings. You've wasted hours responding to people who didn't even want the truth. Continuing from the power of chosen silence, let's now explore a crucial turning point when you realize that not every word or action deserves your attention. They just wanted to have the last word. And in that cycle, you gradually lost yourself. The shift happens when you realize that not every comment deserves your clarity, not every provocation deserves your presence, not every insult is an invitation to battle. Some things only survive because you respond to them, and when you withdraw your reaction, they die away. This kind of silence isn't cold, it's strategic. It's the pause between who you were and who you are becoming. It gives you space to reflect, to choose your next move, to protect your energy before it's spent on things unworthy. Silence makes you harder to read, yes, but it also makes you harder to manipulate. And that is a power no one can take from you. People won't always like your silence. They'll accuse you of being distant, arrogant, or indifferent. Let them. That discomfort they feel comes from their mind trying to fill the blanks you stopped offering. And that is not your responsibility. You're not here to soothe everyone's insecurity. You're here to rise. Over time, you'll find that silence protects what words often destroy. Your peace, your mystery, your ability to act from choice rather than compulsion. And when you do speak, it means something because you've trained yourself not to speak from emotion but from principle. So let them wonder why you didn't respond. Let them question your calm. Let them sit with the space you no longer fill with noise. Because your silence is not weakness, it's evolution. You've outgrown the need to be constantly available, constantly explaining, constantly performing. Now your absence speaks, your stillness speaks, your restraint speaks. And what it says is simple. I no longer owe anyone a version of myself that costs me my peace. 7. If you can stay calm in chaos, you're already elite. There's a moment, and if you've ever truly grown, you've felt it. When everything around you is on fire, plans fall apart, people change, the things you relied on crack under pressure, voices get louder, the world demands a reaction. But instead of collapsing, you don't. You breathe, you observe, you wait, not because you're numb, but because something inside you has changed. This is the Stoic threshold. The place where ordinary people panic, but you choose to remain. Not frozen, not passive, but calm, present, anchored. It's easy to stay centered when life is predictable. When the bills are paid, when relationships feel stable, when your body is rested, when the sun is shining, anyone can look composed in peace. But real chaos, that's the test. It exposes what's real. It reveals whether your inner peace was a pose or a practice. The Stoic doesn't avoid storms. He walks into them prepared. He doesn't expect the world to be kind. He trains himself to remain kind when the world forgets how. He doesn't need the situation to be ideal to act with integrity. His response doesn't rise and fall with circumstances. It's shaped by principle, by habit, by clarity of purpose. And that's what makes calm so powerful. Not because it looks impressive, but because it's earned. You only learn it by walking through chaos enough times without letting it change who you are. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not in retreat, but during wars, plagues, and betrayal. He ruled an empire while writing reminders to himself about staying calm, staying humble, staying present. Because even the most powerful man knew that if you lose your inner state, you have. Building on the power of calmness and maintaining presence through chaos, let's now explore what no one tells you about true calm. Even when you've experienced deep calm, it doesn't always feel peaceful. Sometimes your heart races. Sometimes your thoughts spin uncontrollably. But calm isn't about feeling perfect. It's about not fueling the fire. It's about choosing to respond deliberately, even while your body is screaming for action. It's about mastering the pause before you speak, the breath before you act, the step back before you decide, and the world will notice. Because most people move fast. When things get hard, they panic, they project, they collapse inward, or explode outward. So when someone moves through chaos slowly with presence, they stand out, not as emotionless, but as elite. Not because they're better, but because they've trained for this. If you can hold your peace in the face of provocation, maintain your values amid loss, and think clearly while others shout, then you've stepped into a different league, not of success, but of sovereignty. You won't always get it right. You'll lose your center sometimes. But every time you come back faster, you grow. Every time you observe instead of react, you strengthen. Every time you choose stillness over noise, you lead, even if no one sees it. So next time chaos calls and everything inside you wants to break, remember, you don't need to match the storm. You need to become the anchor. 8. Attention is power. Don't give it away freely. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table of your mind. Not every thought deserves a second look. Not every distraction deserves entry. Yet, most people hand out their attention like loose change, scrolling endlessly, reacting constantly, investing energy in gossip, comparison, anxiety, and drama. As if attention were infinite, as if it didn't shape your entire reality, but it does. Where your attention goes, your life follows. And what you water with, focus grows. The Stoic doesn't guard his attention out of fear. He guards it because he knows it's his most sacred asset. In a world where everyone fights to hijack your mind through algorithms, outrage, noise, and shallow validation, the one who remains aware of where his gaze rests wins. Think about it. You become what you repeatedly give your attention to, the headlines you obsess over, the approval you chase, the conflicts you replay in your mind 100 times. These things aren't harmless. They're habits, quietly shaping your identity. Marcus Aurelius said, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. So if your thoughts are scattered, your life will be too. If your attention is constantly borrowed, your focus will vanish. And without focus, you lose not just time, but direction." So the Stoic trains his gaze not just to look, but to see. He's not pulled into every notification. He doesn't click every headline. He doesn't react to every provocation. He chooses, and that choice becomes his advantage. You start to feel it the moment. You reclaim your focus. Things that used to feel urgent suddenly feel empty. That argument isn't worth your energy. That post isn't worth your scroll. That person who used to live rent-free in your head no longer holds the key. You stop leaking attention into places that don't build you. And it's not about becoming hard or closed off, it's about becoming deliberate. Because when you stop giving your attention to everything, you can finally give it to something. What matters? Your craft, your purpose, your peace, your presence. Building on the power of maintaining presence and selective attention, let's now dive deeper into how you manage your mind and value yourself. Most people are tired not because they have done too much, but because they have given too much attention to things that gave them nothing in return. Don't make that same mistake. Don't confuse information with growth. Don't mistake stimulation for nourishment. Your mind is not a landfill, it is a temple. Treat it as such, and yes, people might feel the distance you create. Let them. The space you build isn't rejection, it's reclamation. You're not ignoring them, you're prioritizing yourself, your stillness, your clarity, your rise. So ask yourself every day, who or what is taking more of my mind than they've earned? And if you don't like the answer, change it. Because attention is power, and power should never be given away accidentally. 9. Make your presence feel like a privilege. You don't need to announce your worth. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to demand others respect you, validate you, or choose you. The Stoic knows presence is earned not by performance but by alignment. And when you live deeply aligned with who you are and what you value, your presence becomes a force, not loud, not flashy, but undeniable. We've been taught to chase validation, to accommodate others, to shrink our needs just to stay in the room. But when you start living by principle instead of popularity, everything shifts. You stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, am I honoring myself here? You stop twisting yourself into versions that fit someone else's expectations. You begin to realize your time, energy, and attention are not obligations, but offerings, and not everyone has earned them. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That's the point, embodiment, integrity. When you live from the inside out, when your words match your values, when your actions match your philosophy, people feel it. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to sell it. You are it. And suddenly, your presence starts to feel different. It carries weight. It calms the room. It makes people slow down, straighten up, think twice before they speak. Not because you demand it, but because you live it. This isn't arrogance. It's self-respect. And it's rare. Most people give away their presence cheaply, to gossip, to chaos, to anything that asks for it. But you begin to realize that the more you grow, the more selective you must become. Not everyone can sit with you in stillness. Not everyone deserves access to your attention. Not everyone knows what to do with presence that isn't performative but rooted. And when you treat your presence like a privilege, people adjust. Those who take you for granted fade. Those who rise to meet your energy stay. Your relationships shift. Your conversations deepen. Your boundaries no longer feel like walls but standards. But this shift requires consistency. You can't half-embody presence. It's not a tactic. It's not about acting powerful. It's about becoming powerful. In the way you wake up, the way you speak, the way you enter a room and listen before you speak, the way you no longer over-explain when someone doesn't understand you because you don't need their approval. To continue living in alignment, building on the courage to stay true to yourself and maintain a powerful presence, let's dive deeper into how to face resistance and grow without explanation. Yes, some people will feel intimidated by you. Let them. They're not intimidated by you, but by the version of themselves they're not ready to face. That's not your burden. You don't owe anyone a diluted version of your truth just to make them comfortable. You owe yourself your full, unapologetic self. So live as if your presence is sacred. because it truly is. Don't beg to be invited into rooms where you have to leave your integrity at the door. Don't stay in spaces where being overlooked is normal. Don't chase connection at the cost of your inner authority. Instead, become the kind of person who is felt even in silence, whose absence is noticed because their energy carries weight, and whose presence, when given, feels like a gift. Because the highest form of power isn't what you say, it's who you are when you say nothing at all. 10. Outgrow people without announcement. Not every ending requires a speech. Not every evolution demands confrontation. Growth is often quiet, not out of fear but out of wisdom. You begin to see things differently. What once excited you now feels empty. What you once tolerated now feels like noise. And some people who fit your past no longer fit your present. But instead of fighting to explain or waiting for them to understand, the Stoic simply moves forward without noise, without drama, without regret. It's not that you stop caring. It's that you stop shrinking. You stop pretending you don't notice the disconnect. You stop rehearsing conversations that won't change anything. You stop editing yourself so others won't feel insecure. Because the truth is, you didn't change too much. You just started becoming who you really are. And not everyone is meant to meet that version of you. Outgrowing people is natural. It doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean you're better. It just means your values shifted, your vision deepened, your standards rose. And the more aligned you become, the more misalignment becomes obvious. You don't need to judge it, you don't need to resent it, you just need to respect it. Let the distance grow. Let the silence stretch. Let what no longer serves you fall away on its own. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And often the people who no longer align with your direction are not obstacles, they're signals, they're mirrors. They show you how much you've grown, and they teach you one of the hardest lessons: to walk away without needing to be right, to let go without needing closure. Sometimes it comes with misunderstanding. Sometimes it comes with walking a road no one else is ready for yet. But the Stoic understands your peace matters more than their approval. Your path matters more than being liked. Your energy is too valuable to waste explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding your growth. So you stop calling, stop chasing, stop trying to drag people into seasons they didn't choose. You don't block them out of spite. You don't leave with bitterness. You simply stop showing up in places where your soul feels small. You choose stillness over noise, progress over nostalgia, purpose over familiarity. And that's not cruelty, it's clarity. Over time, those who resonate with your frequency will find you again, and those who were only meant for a chapter will quietly fade. Let them. You don't need to carry everyone to prove your loyalty. Continuing. From the courage to move forward and stay true to yourself, let's now take a deeper look at how you face resistance and grow without the need for explanations. Yes, some people will feel intimidated or fearful of you. Let them. They are not afraid of you, but of the version of themselves they are not ready to face. That is not your burden. You don't owe anyone a softer version of your truth just to make them comfortable. You owe yourself the full, unapologetic version. So, live as if your presence is sacred because it truly is. Don't beg to be invited into rooms where you must leave your integrity at the door. Don't stay in spaces where being overlooked is normalized. Don't chase connection at the cost of your inner authority. Instead, become the kind of person who is felt even in silence, whose absence is noticed because their energy carries weight, and whose presence, when given, feels like a gift. Because the highest form of power isn't what you say, but who you are when you say nothing at all. 10. Outgrow people without announcements. Not every ending requires a speech. Not every evolution needs confrontation. Growth is often quiet, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You begin to see things differently. What once excited you now feels empty. What you once tolerated now feels like noise. And some people who fit your past no longer fit your present. But instead of fighting to explain or waiting for them to understand, the Stoic simply moves forward without noise, drama, or regret. It's not that you stop caring, it's that you stop shrinking. You stop pretending not to notice the disconnect. You stop rehearsing conversations that won't change anything. You stop editing yourself so others don't feel insecure. Because the truth is, you didn't change too much. You just started becoming who you really are. And not everyone is meant to meet that version of you. Outgrowing people is natural. It doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean you're better. It just means your values have shifted, your vision has deepened, your standards have risen. And the more aligned you become, the more misalignment becomes obvious. You don't need to judge it. You don't need to resent it. You just need to respect it. Let the distance grow. Let the silence stretch. Let what no longer serves you fall away naturally. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And often the people who no longer align with your direction are not obstacles. They are signals. They are mirrors. They show you how much you've grown. And they teach you one of the hardest lessons. To walk away without needing to be right. To let go without needing closure. Sometimes this comes with misunderstanding. Sometimes it means walking a road no one else is ready to follow yet. But the Stoic understands your peace matters more than their approval. Your path matters more than being liked. Your energy is too valuable to waste explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding your growth. So you stop calling, stop chasing, stop trying to drag people into seasons they didn't choose. You don't block them out of spite. You don't leave with bitterness. You simply stop showing up where your soul feels small. You choose stillness. Over noise, progress over nostalgia, purpose over familiarity. And that's not cruelty, it's clarity. Over time, those who resonate with your frequency will find you again. And those who were only meant for a chapter will quietly fade. Let them. You don't need to carry everyone to prove your loyalty. Continuing from the courage to move inward and maintain your values, let's delve deeper into mastering yourself and sustaining your focus. Next time you find yourself reaching out just to be seen, chasing just to be loved, or explaining just to be respected, pause. Return home. You were never meant to beg for what your soul already carries, and those who truly see that won't need convincing. There comes a stage in your evolution when you stop turning your head every time someone calls your name. You stop explaining your silence. You stop apologizing for your focus. You no longer feel the need to check in, follow up, or make everyone comfortable with your limited availability. Naturally, they'll begin to notice. They'll say, "You've changed," that you've become distant, selfish, maybe even cold. But what they're really sensing is your alignment, your clarity, your withdrawal from chaos. It's not that you're ignoring them, it's that you're finally listening to yourself. Self-mastery doesn't happen in public, it happens in solitude. It's built in the hours you dedicate to your habits, your health, your inner work, while others scroll, gossip, or chase fleeting validation. It's forged in mornings you rise without applause, and nights you stay in to sharpen your vision, rather than be pulled into distractions disguised as connection. From the outside, it may look like distance, but from within, it's peace, discipline, and direction. The Stoic doesn't apologize for this. He doesn't explain why he doesn't answer every message, why he doesn't engage in every conflict, or why he seems quieter than before. He knows energy is currency, and mastery requires investment. What you invest in daily is what you become. So if you keep handing your attention to everyone who expects it, your growth will always be delayed by their demands. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Tranquility comes when you stop caring about what others say, think or do, and focus solely on what you do." That is the essence of this principle. You don't owe your progress to anyone's understanding. You don't need to keep showing up in old conversations just because people are used to hearing from you. You don't need to water relationships that once mattered but now no longer grow. You simply stay rooted. You build in silence and let the results speak for themselves. This kind of focus will feel threatening to those who depended on your distraction, those who needed your attention, to validate their own chaos. But their discomfort isn't your responsibility. Your growth is. It's not just about ignoring others. It's about ignoring what's irrelevant, the drama, the need to be seen, the pull to compare, the fear of missing out. Eventually, you realize the world doesn't owe you a platform, and you don't owe the world a constant performance. You owe yourself a life that comes from deep, sustained attention to your mind, your habits, and your inner standards. This is what separates the seeker from the master. The master doesn't chase approval or visibility. He chases inner coherence. His actions, thoughts, and values align. That alignment creates gravity, not popularity but power. The kind of power that needs no defense. The kind of power others feel when you enter a room, even if you say nothing at all. So let them feel ignored. Not because you're unkind, but because you've remembered what truly matters. Let them sit with your absence. Let them wonder why you've gone quiet. Because when the noise dies down, the message becomes clear. You didn't disappear. You simply decided to grow. You don't become powerful by controlling others. You become powerful by quietly mastering yourself every day in ways no one sees. There's a kind of presence that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek recognition, validation, or applause. It doesn't try to be noticed. Yet, it changes. Rooms, shifts dynamics, and invites respect without a single word. That presence is built in silence. It's forged in solitude. It's shaped by the decisions you make when no one is watching. To stay calm, stay clear, stay aligned, that is the path of the Stoic, not the one who never feels, but the one who refuses to be ruled by every passing. Emotion, not the one who hides in detachment, but the one who shows up with discipline. Not the one who outshines, but the one who outlasts through principle, presence, and peace. You will be misunderstood. Let them misunderstand. You will be called distant. Let them sit in their own noise. You will lose people. Let them go. Because the deeper you go into yourself, the more refined your energy becomes, and the fewer people will be able to hold it. That's not failure. That's the cost of becoming rare. So take everything you've heard here and don't just think about it. Live it in your stillness, your speech, your next breath, your next decision, your next moment of resistance. Let your boundaries speak. Let your silence carry weight. Let your life, not your noise, be the proof of who you are. And when the world pulls at your attention, return to yourself. When the noise gets loud, return to your focus. When others demand your energy, return to your peace. Because the one who lives from that place, unshaken, undistracted, undivided, is not just stoic, he is free.